They say St. Petersburg was built on water, but the real city, it was built on secrets. Deep under its palaces, hidden tunnels still whisper Cold War fears. On its streets, the ghost of Rasputin supposedly roams and laughs. What happens when the sun refuses to set for 50 nights in a row? And up above, 300 bridges rise at night, turning the whole city into a floating labyrinth. What's real, and what's just myth? Let's get started without further delay. In the shadowy corners of St. Petersburg, the beauty you see by daylight fades into something much darker. Let's start at Yusupov Palace, one of the grandest estates in the city. He was here, inside these gilded rooms, where Grigory Rasputin, the mystic who held the Russian royal family in his grip, took his final breaths. To this day, some locals say his ghost still paces the halls, laughing softly, like he knows something we never will. Out in Senate Square stands the Bronze Horseman, the massive statue of Peter the Great on horseback. At first glance, it's just a monument, a tribute to the city's founder. But ask the locals, and they'll tell you, as long as the Bronze Horseman stands untouched, St. Petersburg will never fall. It sounds like a myth, until you realize the only time the statue was covered and hidden away was during World War II. For nearly 900 days, the city endured the brutal siege of Leningrad. And the Bronze Horseman? It stood tall the entire time, wrapped carefully to protect it from shrapnel. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe Peter the Great still watches over his city. What's your theory? Do you believe in the curse of the Bronze Horseman? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Yet some of St. Petersburg's strangest stories lie beneath the surface, literally. The city's metro isn't just a way to get around. It's one of the deepest metro systems in the world, plunging up to 86 meters below ground, deeper than a 20-story building. Officially, it's an engineering marvel. Unofficially, it's a fortress. Many of these tunnels were built not just for trains, but for survival. Documents declassified in 2024 confirmed what locals have whispered for decades. Several metro stations double as hidden bunkers, capable of sheltering thousands in the event of nuclear war. One former metro worker, Vladimir M., now retired at 72, shared his own chilling account with reporters last year. There's a tunnel off the main line near Admiraltskaya station. We were told never to enter it. Once I saw 2 men go in. They never came back. The next morning, that tunnel was sealed off like it never existed. So we've delved into the hidden side of St. Petersburg. It's time to flip the script, because when the sun refuses to set, this city transforms into something even stranger. Keep watching. In most cities, the sunset signals the end of the day. But in St. Petersburg, during the peak of summer, the sun refuses to set. From late May to early July, darkness becomes a fleeting memory. For nearly 50 days straight, the city bathes in soft, silvery light, a natural phenomenon called the White Nights. In 2025, the St. Petersburg Tourism Committee reported that over 4.5 million visitors came to the city during White Night season alone. For locals, it's not just a spectacle, it's a state of mind. Sleep becomes optional. The line between night and day blurs. Every evening feels like a Friday, and every street becomes a stage. But one night stands above the rest: the Scarlet Sails Festival, a tradition dating back to the end of World War II. It started as a celebration for school graduates, but over the decades, it grew into something much bigger. Today, it's the largest public celebration in Russia, drawing over 1 million people to the banks of the Neva. For Sergei, a local photographer who spent his whole life in St. Petersburg, White Nights are sacred. In an interview with Russia Travel Journal last year, he described the feeling: it's the only time of year when the city feels completely awake. You finish work, meet friends, walk along the canals, and suddenly you realize it's 3 a.m. and the sky still glows. You don't go home, you just keep living. What would you do with 50 days of endless daylight? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your stories. But why does this happen here, so far from the Arctic Circle? Scientists explain that it's all about latitude. St. Petersburg sits at 59.9 degrees north, just shy of the polar region where the midnight sun is more famous. But science can't explain everything. Some locals say the light brings out the city's hidden soul, as if the ghosts of poets, artists, and dreamers rise with the midnight glow. Others believe it's the city's reward for surviving centuries of war, floods, and revolution, a cosmic gift for a place that refuses to surrender to darkness. Have you ever been in a place that felt too perfect, like there had to be something hiding just out of sight? Let's step into the St. Petersburg Metro, not just a way to get from A to B, but a living museum beneath the streets. With 54 stations spread across 5 lines, each stop feels like a doorway into the city's artistic soul, some glittering with Soviet pride, others echoing the grandeur of Imperial Russia. Opened in 1955, the St. Petersburg Metro was built not just for transportation, but to impress. Stations like Avtovo shine with massive glass columns, while Admiralteyskaya, one of the deepest metro stations in the world, plunges a staggering 86 meters underground and is deeper than a 20-story building buried beneath the city. According to the 2025 Russian Ministry of Transport report, the St. Petersburg Metro serves over 2.5 million passengers daily. It's efficient, running trains on time with 98% punctuality. But those numbers only tell part of the story. The rest? It's hidden beneath the surface, literally. Documents declassified in 2024 by the Russian Federal Archival Agency revealed something long suspected but rarely confirmed. Several St. Petersburg metro stations double as nuclear bunkers, equipped to shelter thousands if war ever broke out. Hidden corridors run off the main platforms, some sealed decades ago, others quietly maintained under official silence. In fact, deep under Primorskaya station, engineers discovered a sealed Soviet-era room last year, fully stocked with Cold War survival supplies, from gas masks to canned food labeled 1978. Local historians believe these passages connect to secret tunnels under nearby government buildings and palaces. One retired metro worker, Anatoly K., who spent 32 years working maintenance on Line 3, told a chilling story in a 2025 interview with the Russian Urban History Project. There's a maintenance tunnel off Sportivnaya station. We were told never to enter it alone. Once, during my first year, a colleague dared me to walk through it after hours. I went 200 meters in, and the lights flickered out. All I could hear was water dripping and footsteps. But no one was there. I ran back. We never spoke about it again. Whether you believe Anatoly or not, one fact remains: the deeper you go beneath St. Petersburg, the more the city keeps its secrets to itself. Step away from the metro tunnels, and you'll find yourself surrounded by water everywhere. This city isn't called the Venice of the North for nothing. Over 300 bridges and more than 100 islands turn St. Petersburg into a floating labyrinth where history drifts alongside the tide. Of all the city's waterways, none is more legendary than the Neva River. Cutting through the heart of St. Petersburg, it's more than a river. It's the city's spine, linking its history, culture, and daily life into one seamless flow. River cruises are a rite of passage here. Every summer, over 2 million visitors take to the water, drifting past the Winter Palace, the Peter and Paul Fortress, and rows of imperial mansions that look straight out of a Russian fairy tale. But the real magic, it happens at night. When the clock strikes midnight, the bridges rise, giant steel wings lifting into the sky to let ships pass from the Baltic Sea into the heart of the city. Locals gather at the water's edge to watch, couples toast with champagne, and for a few perfect moments the entire city pauses to admire its own reflection. But the beauty isn't just in the view. Some of the grandest palaces, like the Yusupov Palace and the Stroganov Palace, weren't just built beside the canals, they were designed to be approached from the water. That's how the Russian elite lived here for centuries. Even today, some of these floating mansions are said to hold secrets beneath their floors, private docks, hidden escape tunnels, and chambers flooded long ago when the Neva overflowed its banks. In 2024, during restoration work at the Shuvalov Palace, workers discovered a sealed boathouse filled with decaying furniture, personal letters from the 1800s, and a wooden chest locked tight with no key. Its contents? Still unknown. If you could arrive at your front door by boat every night, would you trade your car keys for a captain's hat? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you won't miss any exciting videos in the future. St. Petersburg isn't just a city you visit, it's a city you read, listen to, and watch come to life with every step you take. St. Petersburg itself feels like one giant living museum where art spills from gallery walls into the streets and history waits just behind every doorway. Let's start with the most famous name of them all, the Hermitage Museum. Sitting like a crown jewel along the Neva, the Hermitage is one of the largest and oldest museums in the world, with over 3 million pieces of art and artifacts in its collection. From Da Vinci's Madonnas to ancient Scythian gold, the Hermitage doesn't just collect art, it collects time itself. Even if you spent just 1 minute at each exhibit, it would take you over 6 years to see it all. But what most visitors don't know is that the Hermitage has its own secret army, a team of about 50 cats who live in the museum's basement, guarding the priceless works from rats and mice. These cats have been protecting the Hermitage since the 18th century, making them part of the museum's living history. Just a short walk from the Hermitage, the Mariinsky Theatre stands like a temple to Russian drama and elegance. Since its opening in 1860, it has been the beating heart of ballet and opera in St. Petersburg. But art in St. Petersburg doesn't just live in frames and theaters, it flows through its literature, carved into the city's very soul. Walk along the canals, and you'll follow in the footsteps of Alexander Pushkin, the poet who gave Russian literature its voice. Turn a corner, and you might find yourself outside the old home of Fyodor Dostoevsky, the man who turned the city into a character itself in novels like Crime and Punishment. For those who want to dig deeper, there's one more place worth finding, a museum hidden inside a quiet courtyard on Litiny Prospect. This is the Anna Akhmatova Museum, dedicated to the poet whose voice carried through the darkest years of Soviet repression. The museum isn't grand or flashy. It's personal. Her writing desk sits just where she left it, her poems still scratched into notebooks under the dim light of a small lamp. In the back garden, her statue stands tall, facing the direction of the old KGB building, a reminder that art survives even when freedom is taken away. What kind of art speaks to you most? Paintings, music, or stories told in books? Share your answer in the comments. I'd love to know what inspires you. When it comes to cuisine in St. Petersburg, you don't just eat, you taste history. Let's start with the classics, the dishes every Russian knows by heart. First, beef stroganoff, a creamy, savory masterpiece first served in the 1800s at the table of Count Alexander Stroganov, one of the richest men in Imperial Russia. Then there's blini with caviar, paper-thin pancakes folded around pearls of glistening black or red roe. It's a dish that once symbolized luxury, but during Soviet times, blini became food for the people, a versatile street snack served with jam, honey, or even sour cream when caviar was out of reach. For a different flavor of history, step into one of St. Petersburg's surviving stolovayas, old-style Soviet canteens that have barely changed since the 1970s. Plastic trays slide down metal rails. The menu is simple: borscht, cutlets, mashed potatoes, a sweet fruit drink. But today's St. Petersburg food scene isn't stuck in the past. Young chefs are blending Russian tradition with global flavors, creating a new culinary identity for the city. At restaurants like Dakhniki and Katyusha, you might find dumplings stuffed with crab or borscht infused with Japanese miso. Even Pyshki, St. Petersburg's legendary donuts, are getting gourmet twists, served with everything from salted caramel to blackcurrant glaze. Every summer, the streets themselves turn into a giant outdoor gallery and dining hall. During the St. Petersburg Street Art Festival, murals appear overnight, covering old buildings with bold new stories. At the same time, food stalls line Nevsky Prospect, serving everything from grilled meat skewers to Georgian khachapuri, with local bands playing well into the night. The 2025 St. Petersburg Cultural Development Report estimates that the Street Art Food Festival attracts more than 800,000 visitors each year, making it one of the largest cultural events in Russia. If you could only try one Russian dish in St. Petersburg, what would it be? Stroganoff, blini, or something completely different? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to hear your taste for adventure. Food and culture are a window into a city's soul, but if you want to understand why St. Petersburg became such a powerful cultural and economic force, you need to look at where it stands on the map. Nestled in northwest Russia, St. Petersburg covers 1,439 square kilometers, but what makes its location extraordinary is its position as Russia's front door to Europe. To the north, just 300 kilometers away, lies Finland. To the west, the waters of the Gulf of Finland stretch out to the Baltic Sea, linking St. Petersburg to ports across Estonia, Sweden, and Germany. A drive to Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, takes less than 5 hours, closer than a trip from New York to Boston. Because of this unique location, St. Petersburg has always looked westward, adopting trends and ideas from Europe faster than other Russian cities. It's why the city's architecture, fashion, and even its cafe culture feel more European than Muscovite. This isn't new. Peter the Great deliberately built the city to look and feel like a European capital, not a traditional Russian one. In fact, a 2025 cultural survey conducted by the Russian Center for Sociological Research found that 78% of St. Petersburg residents identify themselves as having a European mindset, compared to only 42% in Moscow. This geographic difference fuels a cultural rivalry that's been brewing for centuries. Moscow, power, politics, and fast-paced business. St. Petersburg, art, history, and the romance of Europe meeting Russia. Even the weather plays a role. While Moscow's climate swings between brutal winters and scorching summers, St. Petersburg's maritime climate makes it cooler, rainier, and more temperamental. But being Russia's window to Europe isn't always a blessing. St. Petersburg's position has made it the first target in nearly every major conflict. From Napoleon's invasions to the siege of Leningrad in World War II, the city's location has put it right in the line of fire. Even today, this strategic value shapes how the city is governed, defended, and connected. In 2025, the Russian Defense Ministry continues to classify St. Petersburg as a priority city for military infrastructure, given its proximity to NATO borders. So how does all this, the location, the culture clash, the history of survival, shape how people actually live in St. Petersburg today? Stay tuned, we'll dive deeper into this story next. St. Petersburg isn't a city that wakes up slowly. By 7 a.m. Nevsky Prospect, the city's beating heart, is already buzzing. Students hurry toward metro stations, coffee cups in hand. Office workers line up at corner kiosks for fresh pyroshki, those warm, flaky pastries stuffed with meat or cabbage. But the mornings are only half the story. When the sun dips low, or in summer, when it barely dips at all, the city transforms. Chandeliers glow inside high-end cafes. Rubinstein Street, the city's famous dining strip, is filled with couples, tourists, and after-work crowds. By midnight, the energy shifts again. Luxury cars glide past old palaces. In hidden courtyards, pop-up bars open their doors, while music from underground clubs drifts up through the cobblestones. According to the 2025 St. Petersburg Cultural Economic Report, published by the city administration, more than 14,000 cafes, bars, and restaurants operate across the city, one of the highest densities of social venues in Europe. The social scene flows from historic squares like Palace Square to modern creative hubs like Sevkabel Port, a transformed industrial space that now hosts art markets, food festivals, and live music every weekend. But this vibrant life comes at a price, literally. In 2025, the average rent for a two-bedroom apartment in central St. Petersburg climbed to about $1,650 per month, according to DomClick, Russia's largest real estate platform. That might sound manageable by Western standards, but here's the catch. The average salary in St. Petersburg remains roughly $924 per month, meaning many residents spend over half their income just to keep a roof over their heads. This financial pressure fuels a side hustle culture, where people juggle two, sometimes three jobs, bartender by night, freelance designer by day, with maybe a weekend gig running historical walking tours. If Moscow is about power and ambition, St. Petersburg is about soul. In Moscow, success means money and influence. In St. Petersburg, success means being part of the scene, whether that's exhibiting at a local gallery, landing a table at a hot new fusion restaurant, or knowing which hidden rooftop bar has the best Neva River view. You see this difference just by watching the streets. In Moscow, suits and designer labels dominate the sidewalks. In St. Petersburg, you'll find a mix of styles. Some polished, some deliberately bohemian, often within the same group of friends. People take pride in looking good. But here, looking interesting matters even more. But behind the beauty, there's also a toughness. St. Petersburg's weather is famously unpredictable. One minute the sun warms the canals, the next minute a cold sea wind cuts through your coat. Rain falls over 200 days a year. So how do the people of St. Petersburg, creative, stylish, and driven, find their balance in a city that constantly pushes and pulls them between beauty and struggle? To understand that, we need to go back to the very beginning with the vision of Peter the Great. If you want to understand why St. Petersburg feels so different from any other Russian city, you need to go back over 300 years, to a time when this land was nothing but swamps and forests, swept by the cold winds of the Baltic Sea. No palaces, no canals, just mud and silence. But in 1703, one man stood on these very marshes and saw something no one else could. That man was Peter the Great. Peter wasn't just a Tsar, he was a builder, obsessed with modernization. After traveling across Europe, visiting shipyards, palaces, and trade hubs, Peter returned home convinced that Russia needed a gateway to the West. Moscow was too landlocked, too tied to old traditions. Peter wanted something new, something that would force Russia to open its doors to Europe. So on May 27, 1703, he ordered the first stones to be laid for a city, unlike any Russia had ever seen, right on the banks of the Neva River, a place that froze in winter, flooded in spring, and seemed impossible to tame. But Peter didn't care. He brought in architects from Italy, Germany, and the Netherlands, ordering them to create wide boulevards, grand palaces, and canals that echoed Amsterdam and Venice, and the cities he deeply admired. Within a generation, St. Petersburg became the new capital of the Russian Empire. But St. Petersburg's story didn't stop with Peter. The city itself became a mirror for Russia's shifting identity. In 1914, as World War I broke out, its German-sounding name, St. Petersburg, was changed to Petrograd, a more Slavic alternative. After the Bolshevik Revolution and Lenin's death, the city was renamed again in 1924, becoming Leningrad, the heart of Soviet power. Then in 1991, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the people voted to restore its original name, St. Petersburg, honoring the vision of its founder. You can still feel Peter's vision in the streets. The European-style boulevards, the grand facades along the canals, and the very idea that St. Petersburg isn't just Russian, it's a bridge between worlds. But Peter's influence goes deeper than architecture. St. Petersburg's independent spirit, its obsession with art, its willingness to blend tradition with innovation, all comes from the mind of a Tsar who refused to accept limits. If you enjoyed today's video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot to us. Click on the video that appears on your screen right now. I'm sure you'll love this content. Comment below about the next country you want to see featured on our channel. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next video. Thanks for being with us on this great journey. Leave your thoughts in the comments and like to help us. Remember to subscribe for more. See you soon.